Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everybody, I hope that you're doing well. Today we're going to work on Surah ABASA, which is Surah 80 of Al-Quran Al-Kareem. It is made of 42 ayat, 42 verses. The word Abasa means he frowned. Surah Abasa was among the first surah to be revealed in the city of Mecca. Surah Abasa tells us how the Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad rejected and dismissed a blind man who asked him a question, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disapproved his attitude. Surah Abasa emphasizes the importance for men to be fair and good with others, regardless of their social class. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Abasa begins with a reminder to Sayyidina Muhammad not to be distracted by disbelievers and to focus on his teaching to people that are worthy of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the truth. Surah Abasa is divided in two major parts. In the first part of Surah Abasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reproaches Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad for not having given the necessary attention and interest to the blind poor man. Instead, he dealt exclusively with the great pagan and atheist leaders. The beginning of the surah was therefore revealed to teach our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad the sense of priorities regarding the efforts to be provided in the teaching of Islam and the call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is more advantageous and beneficial to favor the faithful person despite his distress and his weakness, rather than the disbeliever, even if he is rich, powerful, of a high social rank. In the second part of Surah Abasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemns the ingratitude of men in general. People tend to become proud, pretentious, and forget their origin and their beginning, and they forget their final destination. On that day, the day of judgment, the day of resurrection, there will be on one hand the radiant, laughing and rejoicing faces, and on the other hand there will be faces covered with dust, covered with darkness. The disbelievers in their intention and the debauched, the libertines in their deeds. Now I'm going to translate Surah Abasa ayah by ayah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the specially merciful. Abasa wa tawalla, he frowned and turned away, he did not pay attention. And ja'ahu al-a'ma, a blind man came to him. وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَكَّى, and you cannot know that the way he cleansed. أَوْ يَذَّكَّرُ فَتَنْفَعَهُ الذِّكْرَى, or he might receive advice so that the advice might profit him. أَمَّا مَنْ يَسْتَغْنَى, but the one who considers himself self-sufficient, فَأَنْتَ لَهُ تَصَدَّى, yet to him you are turned to. وَمَا عَلَيْكَ أَلَّا يَزَكَّى, and no blame is on you that he does not get cleansed. وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى, yet the one who comes to you running, وَهُوَ يَخْشَى, and he is in reverence. فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى, however you do not pay attention to him. كَلَّا إِنَّهَا تَذْكِرَةٌ, nay, surely that the Quran Al-Kareem is a dhikr, is an advice. فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَهُ, so those who will remember take advice from it. فِي صُحُفٍ مُكَرَّمَةٍ, and the Quran is in honored pages. مَرْفُوعَةٍ مُطَهَّرَةٍ, in exalted, purified pages. بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ, through the hands of ambassadors, scribes. كِرَامٍ بَرَرَةٍ, written through the hands of the noble truthful. From ayah 1 to ayah 16, Surah Abasa begins by criticizing the behavior of the Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad during an incident. It clearly talks about the values and principles upon which Islam was founded and the true nature of the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to scholars, the first part of Surah ABASA is based on an incident that took place in the early days of Islam. Our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad would talk to the leaders of Quraysh, and he would explain the message of Islam to them and try to persuade them to accept Islam. Sayyidina Muhammad addressed these pagan notables in the hope of seeing them embrace Islam. These leaders were in talks with Sayyidina Muhammad and their antagonism to Islam had not reached a great proportion yet. It was in the beginning of the revelation, when suddenly a man, Ibn Maktoum, a blind, poor man, tried to interrupt the Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad. Being blind, and therefore he was not aware that the Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad was busy. He asked him several times to teach him and explain to him some verses of the Quran al-Karim and certain points of Islam. But Sayyidina Muhammad in his haste to see these pagans accept Islam, he frowned and turned away from him. Sayyidina Muhammad was irritated. He did not appreciate his interruption and ignored him. Following this incident, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed these first verses to reproach and disapprove his attitude in Surah ABASA. Sayyidina Muhammad's way of treating the blind man with neglect and giving his full attention to the leaders of Quraysh was not the fact that he regarded the rich as noble and the poor blind man as unpleasant, but in the contrary, he wanted to convey the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because he thought that people in high ranks of society could be more influential and that the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could be transmitted easily. But this attitude that our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad had at the beginning of his prophecy, his motive was only sincerity and the desire to promote his mission and not the idea of respecting great people and despising the poor. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws his attention to the fact that every man eager to know the truth was important, whether he was weak or poor, and on the contrary, that the man who's heedless of the truth was unimportant, even if that person occupies a high position in society. Thus, he must publicly proclaim and transmit the teaching of Islam to everyone, even more for the people who were worthy of his attention and who were inclined to accept the truth. His sublime and noble message was too lofty to be presented to those who were snobbish, vain, who in their arrogance and vanity thought they did not need him, but rather he needed them. From Ayah 11 to Ayah 16, in the end of the first part of Surah ABASA, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Quran al-Karim. Al-Quran al-Karim is made of a noble message in every way. Its pages are pure and they are entrusted to noble and devoted angels who convey the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his prophets, who in turn convey it to the people. For those who are sincere and who seek to purify themselves and their soul and who will know how to benefit from it. قُتِلَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا أَكْفَرَهُ. The human is ruined himself, being cast off Allah's mercy. How ungrateful he is. مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ. From what thing did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala create him? Min nutfatin khalaqahu faqaddarah. From a nutfa, which is like a sperm drop, then decreed to him a destiny and appointed to him a lifetime. Thumma as-sabila yassarah. Then he has made the way easy for him. Thumma amatahu fa'aqbarah. Then he caused him to die and put in grave. Thumma idha sha'a ansharah. Then when he wills, he will raise him to life again. كلا لما يفضي ما أمره. Nay, man has not carried out what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him. فلينظر الإنسان إلى طعامه. Then let him look at his food. أنا سببنا الماء سبا. How we kept the water pouring. ثم شققنا الأرض شقا. Then we cleaved the earth with such cleaving. فأنبتنا فيها حبا. So we caused to grow therein grains. وعنابا وقضبا. And grapes and clover plants. وزيتونا ونخلا. And olives and date palms. وحدائق غلبا. And gardens with trees within each other. وفاكهة وأبا. And fruits and pasture. متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم. To be a benefit for you and your animals. فإذا جاءت الصاخة. But when as a sakha, the deafening cry comes. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه. The day a man flees from his brother. وأمه وأبيه. And from his mother and his father. وصاحبته وبنيه. And flees from his wife and his son. لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه. For each one of them there is on that day, the day of permission, an affair which will occupy them. وجوه يومئذ مسفرة. On that day there are faces that are bright. ضاحكة مستبشرة. They are smiling faces, heralded with good news. وجوه يومئذ عليها غبرة. And that day of permission, their faces covered with dust. ترهقها الكثرة. A darkness covers it. أولئك هم الكفرة الفجرة. They are the disbelievers, the wicked doers. This is the second part from Ayah 17. After the reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah ABASA turns to the disbelievers who refused the invitation of the Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But the ultimate purpose of Surah ABASA is to emphasize the expressed displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards the unbelieving Qurayshi who, due to their arrogant attitudes and indifference to the truth, they mocked and rejected the message of the truth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carried by his Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the second part of Surah ABASA, the ayats remind us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest, the Almighty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do more than we think or that we can imagine. Surah ABASA also reminds us that the day of resurrection is a day of enormous importance. The terror that will reign there is beyond measure, and that men on that day will see what they have never seen. In these ayats, the disbelievers were first rebuked for the attitude they had taken against their Creator and their Sustainer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the end, they will have been warned of the dreadful fate they will meet because of their conduct on the day of resurrection. Surah ABASA deals with man's ungrateful attitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his refusal to believe in him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah ABASA reminds man of his humble origins. He points out to him the benefits of his life and tells him that it is he, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who determines his death and his resurrection. And yet, man remains ungrateful and refuses to recognize the absolute power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over all the stages of his existence. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites man to reflect on his subsistence and that of his livestock, which are among the many divine benefits. The perfection of creation is also manifested by the subsistence of man, by the creation and the development of man. Man must reflect on the divine capacity which created him and which also provides him with his daily nourishment. From ayah 33 to ayah 42, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the last judgment day. The ending described here in Surah ABASA fits perfectly into the scene at the beginning of the surah, which recalls someone advancing with faith towards someone who considers himself better than him and who turns away from him. The following ayats deal with the subject of the deafening cry, the ear-shattering cry, and the terror it will inspire in people. People will be so terrified that they will forget everything around them, but we can read on the faces what will await each person. There will be beaming, smiling, and happy faces, those who are the people whose hearts will be filled with hope and who will feel reassured because their Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be pleased with them. These people will not know the terror or the deafening cry, and their faces will be relaxed and joyful. On the other hand, there will be faces covered with dust and covered with darkness. Those are the disbelievers who will have believed neither in God nor in His divine message. Sadness and distress will be seen on them, as well as anguish and humiliation. These people will remember what they have done on earth and will become fully aware of the punishment that awaits them. Each one of us will be held to account, and that all that is important in our life are our beliefs and our actions for which we will be rewarded. Wallahu a'lam. I hope that this small explanation and small translation of Surah ABASA was helpful. I wish you the best. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye bye.